Hello and welcome to Coffee Lovers TV. On the show today, we're going to be taking a look at Voila. Now, Voila is specialty instant coffee. So this will be a little bit of a different show. I'm not so much going to be reviewing and tasting coffee as I am going to be sharing a bit about this product, and let's talk a little bit about instant coffee and how you might be interested in this kind of thing. So we also did a Coffee Lovers Radio episode featuring this coffee as well. So I'm going to link to that below and you can check it out. First off, instant coffee. If you hear the phrase instant coffee, you're probably thinking about something that's really not quite palatable or something you would drink only if there was no other option. And that's, that would be the case for me as well. I'd probably think along those lines. Often when I have been traveling to places where there isn't great coffee or it's hard to find good coffee, I will lean on instant coffee in a pinch just to make sure I have something. I can say that I think as far as the typical instant coffees go, things like Starbucks and Nescafe can be relatively palatable drinks. It'll give you, a cup of coffee. This is an entirely different world. And before I get into exactly this, just very briefly, what instant coffee really is. I've talked about this before in the magazine, although it's been quite some time. I had an article on this. One of the most popular ways that instant coffee is made is you essentially take your coffee and brew it, and then they use a sort of chamber system whereby the coffee is sprayed from the top, and as it falls, the chamber pulls all of the moisture, all the water out of the air. So what hits the bottom is coffee solids with no water. It's brewed coffee solids with no water. So when you then re-add water to them, you end up with a cup of coffee. I don't know the process that Voila uses, but what you're getting in here that is vastly different than other instant coffees is really high quality coffee. So if they are using that process, they're using really high quality roasted coffee, they're brewing it very well, and then they're making it into instant coffee. In any case, whatever the exact process is, it has to be pre-brewed coffee, because all we're going to be doing here, and I'll do it in a moment with one of these, is adding water. Pretty new company. I'll link to them below, link to where you can get some of this yourself. What you get in one of these boxes is 5 packets of instant coffee. And one of the fun things about this company is that you get a bunch of different small roasters. So I only have 2 packets left, but I've got this Columbia Lusitania, which is from Kuma Coffee. They're actually in Seattle. And then this Ethiopia Rico Koba from Dapper and Wise Roasters. So the other 3, I can't remember what the other 3 roasters were. We had them on the show, Coffee Lovers Radio. I'll link to that below. And it's instant coffee, so it's a simple matter of putting this in a cup and then pouring in hot water. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and do that. 1 packet, you put in 8 to 10 ounces of water, you give it a stir, yada yada. So I'm gonna make this right now and then come back and talk a bit more, talk some more about Voila, some of my experiences with it, why I think you might like it, and some other thoughts that I have, and then that'll be good. Okie dokie, I decided I would go ahead and bring you along with the brewing of this since it's pretty straightforward. I chose the Ethiopia Riku Koba by Dapper and Wise. They call it Lively Nectarine Black Tea Crisp. So this one will actually make a pretty good experiment, is showing you that nuance is captured. Interestingly, if as I recall from the podcast, since we were brewing multiples of these, they all kind of smelled the same. They've got this like kind of old sweetness smell to them, but they actually kind of smell like my mug after having had a cup of coffee and it's been sitting around for a while. Not necessarily in like a bad way, it's just kind of interesting. But I can smell like actual sweetness. It's certainly better than than any instant coffee I've had before. I dump the rest of this in here. Take 1 pack into the cup and then add water. And I've got a spoon to stir with it as well. I don't know if any of the directions on, I think all the directions just say add water. I found that stirring is probably a good idea. For this, I'm actually pouring water that's about 190. We're not actually brewing here. We're just adding water back to coffee that is brewed. So the temperature is really just for drinking. Actually, it probably would be fine not stirring this, but I'm going to anyways. I just want to see. Hey, it looks like it all dissolved. So probably the agitation of the water is enough. I'm going to stir it anyways. I did notice in some of the other brews that I made with the Voila that you can end up with a little, I guess a little sludginess at the bottom, but it didn't really take too much from the experience for me. Made this with hot water because that's kind of what you're usually gonna do when you're making an instant coffee. I spoke with the creators of Voila and asked them about that, and you can actually brew with cold water as well. Although the colder the water is, especially like if it's actually cold water from the fridge or especially ice water, will have a really hard time dissolving all the solids back into the water. On the radio show, we tested hot water like this, like 190 degrees or so, and we also brewed one that was at about 90 degrees, so a bit more than room temperature. Maybe it was about 80 by the time we poured. I was just curious to see if there would be a difference between the two. And it was a little rough to compare because we were doing 2 different coffees, but we both agreed that we liked the taste better from the hotter coffee, and that the cooler one seemed maybe a little bit sour. Now it'd maybe be interesting to experiment with reheating it hot and then chilling it really fast. And I could maybe do that, and maybe I'll try that in a minute, since I can do that. But the reason I inquired them about the temperature of the water that you use to make the coffee with is this seems like it could be a really good like cold coffee solution for adding to other things. Could be something you might consider baking with as well, although I think in those scenarios the nuances are going to disappear into the food really fast. That's one of the reasons, as a total sidebar, it's one of the reasons why when I'm baking and using coffee, I tend to cold brew, because the brighter nuances disappear. Okay, so this is Voila, and I've just made this Ethiopian. That's actually really nice. It's got a good level of sweetness still, good richness. If you didn't tell me, if I didn't know this was instant coffee, I'm not sure that I would guess that it's instant coffee. So good job on that one. Although I'm not sure I'd guess it's Ethiopian coffee either. It doesn't have like a huge amount of lively brightness, but it's got a good level of sweetness. There's a richness in there. It's pretty good coffee, actually. If you get the Voila online, you get one of these packs. Gets you 5 coffees, that's $16. Now, that is a bit of a steep price if you're doing this every single day. I think something like this is super awesome to have when traveling. So I have had the pleasure of having some Voila while traveling before. I'm gonna do it again. It's really nice to be able to have a pretty good cup of coffee wherever I am. And that's what you're getting here. Hand brewing something is still gonna win out, of course, but there's a balance. There's a definite balance. Of speed, of ease. All I need is a cup and hot water, and I can have a pretty darn good cup of coffee that many times is going to be way better than anything else I could have. That's usually the case while traveling. On an at-home scenario, I think if you find yourself often in situations where you're likely to be using instant coffee, or at home, you're at work, something like that, this is probably going to add up pretty fast, because you're talking a bit over $3 for every cup of coffee, and for me that's totally worth it while traveling, to have something delicious and not have to carry around a brewer and a grinder. But I think that's something you probably have to decide for yourself. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to drink a little bit more of it hot, and then I'm going to chill it. I do like that you get kind of an exploration of different roasters. when you get these boxes. So there is one negative thing that I do have to say about it that actually really bugs me, and that is the packaging. There are things about this packaging which are really nice. The colors, the feel, but it looks like a cigarette carton. I mean, it looks exactly like a cigarette carton, and that really grinds my gears a bit. Voila! If you're watching this, I really hope that you change the design of these boxes. I mean, what we got in here are these packets, and this is a really slick thing. I do have to admit, this is really slick. You can fit this in your pocket, in your bag, whatever, but it's way too much. I mean, there's too much that's like cigarettes about this, and that's really uncomfortable. Especially if I want to get this as a gift for people. I just can't. I can't. And I can't support something that just calls upon that kind of imagery the way that it does. Makes me really uncomfortable. Yeah, we talk about that a bit more in the podcast as well. Link below. Check it out. I think we ranted on that a bit more than I am going to right now. That's about all I can say at the moment. This is a little trite. Ingredients, good coffee. Come on. I mean, I guess it is, but still, come on. That being said, this is the best instant coffee I've ever had in my life. So, and I do like having some of this with me while I'm traveling. I think that kind of thing is pretty nice to have. So, before I go, I'm gonna chill this. I really want to see what it's like. All right, so I just took the coffee that I had, poured it in the cold wave, and now we're gonna give it a look. Like I said on the show, on Coffee Lovers Radio, we had tried this out, not cold coffee like this, but just like room temperature brewing, one of the instant coffees. And it worked, and it tasted pretty decent, but it was a little bit more sour than the hot one. What I'm kind of assuming with that, the coffee, the instant coffee here will taste best when it's as close to however it was brewed. And I'm assuming it was brewed at a pretty typical temperature of 205, around there, something like that. And you normally drink it when, as it cools down from being hot, whatever temperature it gets to, 180, 170, whatever, that you would actually start drinking the coffee at. And if you make it with cooler water, room temperature water, maybe it's not going to be as good. That's just a complete hypothesis. I have nothing backing that up other than my assumptions. So what we're going to see is, does the taste hold up when it's chilled with something like a cold wave? That's actually really interesting. The nectarine on this totally comes out when it's cooled off. Like there's something fruity in here that I didn't taste at all when it was hot. Maybe it is a little bit more sour than when it's hot. That could just be a heat thing. I don't know if sourness is right. Maybe if you're gonna make it cold, maybe you want to use more water. I'm just guessing at this point. Really good cold, actually. I'm tasting that nectarine quite a bit. I don't know if it would taste as good if I made it with the room temperature water, though. I have nothing to base that thought on. But the reason I've been interested in that experiment is just, I like cold coffee. If I'm gonna make this cold, why not just put it with room temperature water and then drop some ice cubes in it? I mean, that could certainly be an option. If I don't have access to hot water, can I still make coffee with this? The answer is yes, you can. But I think if you wanted iced coffee and you have access to hot water and one of these, this is still the way to go. But that's a little bit of a weird thing to do with instant coffee. Obviously, you're not going to have a cold wave when you're traveling, but I just wanted to try it out. Anyhow, so that's Voila. I'll link to all that below, and you can check it out. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Always happy to talk coffee. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.